Okay, I'll call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. First item on the agenda tonight is roll call.
Miller, Rosado, Beck,
Here.
Knott,
Here.
Chancet,
Here.
Sofa,
Here.
Wolf,
Here.
Barron,
Here.
Lehman,
Here.
Ayazi,
Here.
Malay,
Here.
Ewer,
Here.
Cerrone,
Here.
and Vogelsinger.
Here.
We have 12 out of 14.
Okay. And next up would be a reminder to please speak directly into your microphone wherever you are so we can hear you. The item number 3 would be approved minutes for April 13th, 2021 and April 20th, 2021. Does anybody have any comments or corrections? Not? Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Knott,
Aye.
Chancet,
Aye.
Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Need a microphone.
Aye.
oh, thank you. Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller, Rosado, and Beck.
Aye.
Motion carried, 12-0.
Okay. Up next would be items to be removed, added, or changed. Do we have anything tonight?
No.
We're good? Okay. Next up would be items or matters from the public. Item number 5. Do we have anybody from the public for anything not on the agenda tonight? Anybody online? Just to check. If not, we will move on then to the consent agenda. Alderman Chanzit?
Indeed, we just have one item, which is Resolution 21-52-R, approving a plat of dedication of parts of West Wilson Street. And I would move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Motion by Chanzit, second by Knopp. Roll call, please.
Chancet,
Aye.
Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye. Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller, Rosado, and Beck.
Aye.
And Knott. Not forgetting Knott.
Aye.
Motion carried, 12-0.
All right, thank you. Okay, up next is item number 7, discussion on TIF District Grant and Incentives.
Ellen, I'm gonna step out on this.
Okay. Being a downtown business owner in a TIF district,
Mm-hmm.
Leah's going to step out on this one. Okay. This will ever load. And we had talked about this earlier, I think last year, that we were going to review these at some point. Well, now is the point where we're going to review them. Okay, the city administers a number of matching TIF grant programs, including the facade grant, downtown development grant, and signage grants. We also do a low-interest loan program for properties that have been limited to $75,000. There are no specific written guidelines for the loan program. We've also had entered into project-specific redevelopment agreements for new development projects, Walgreens and Washington Place being 2 of those. We've attached guidelines to this and applications for each of these programs to this report for review, and also posted this on the web pages. So normally we would go through and just use those as the only guidelines. Every once in a while, we'd get an exception to that. We'd usually discuss that and then decide on the merits, what did we decide to do. So I think now we're trying to come up with more realistic guidelines, I think, to apply these, in my mind, a little bit more liberally to what we have out there, because there are so many varying things that could be considered in this if we didn't focus them in a narrow little box that we have in the past. And I think in the majority, almost every one of these that we've ever done, whether it be the loan or grants or anything, has always been about trying to, one, usually upgrade buildings, usually make them more accessible, more usable for whatever business was proposed in that area or whatever needed to be done to the buildings in question. And the ones that were always, to me, easy ones to vote on were things that were left with the buildings. When I first got on the council, the signage one was a huge kind of disaster to discuss because it never stayed with the business leaves, the signs leave, whatever. The ones that are about building improvements, to me, are the easier ones, I think, to justify that we are accomplishing with the grant. The real intent of a lot of these is to upgrade the buildings that are there and allow, even if it's just a short-term use for a business for 3 or 5 years, but a building that a building owner can then move somebody else right into because everything's been upgraded in it, whether it be, electric, utilities, whatever in it. I think it's really important that we focus some of that and expand, I think, some of the things that we've done with it. We've tried to do that with some of the economic grant stuff that we've done over the past year or two, just because of the reality of the world. I think these are things we should really look at, and trying to decide what we really feel like we can encourage to happen, because I think there's going to be a lot of people looking to do things in the next 5 years. And anything we can do to incentivize that or make it happen when, hey, they didn't have the last 5 or 10 grand that they needed to get a project done, is going to be really important to make sure that what we have for building stock gets utilized. And I think also so that it makes it attractive to somebody looking at that empty lot or that building that needs to come down and be redone or rebuilt, or something new gets built, that they'll want to do that next to something that maybe had a project happen that really changed the way the building looked or brought a new business into town that really spurred somebody else to want to be next to that. So I think it's really important that, we take a real good look at this and decide where we'd like these, grants to go.
And I think that Scott in his memo laid it out really well that, these programs have served us well to encourage some nice projects in our downtown, to make improvements to existing structures and to incentivize the opening of some businesses within our downtown. But there are areas where some questions arise, and we want to ask for your advice on what your intent would be in the future of these programs. Specifically, would you suggest that there be any limit on the number of grants that can be provided to any particular business or to any particular property? Is it limited to types, or can they get one of each kind of type, but not the same type of grant within a 5-year period? There aren't those types of guidelines that currently exist within our TIF grant programs. The other is, up to this point, there has been a differentiation between grants provided to make improvements to a property, but not for the regular maintenance of the property. And so, but we are getting requests, given the nature of the economic times that we are in. Some people are requesting grants in order to perform what would be considered more ordinary maintenance on buildings. And then the third would be, and I think that we actually have some individuals here tonight that would like to speak to this, the TIF redevelopment grant program that we have currently is restricted to projects will add revenue, retail type of revenue, whether it is through retail tax or alcohol tax, then that makes that type of business eligible for that incentive. And so Mr. Beck and Mr. Gosselin are here tonight and would like to speak to you about reasons why you may want to consider expanding that to other non-traditional revenue generating types of business and instead consider projects such as the one that they are proposing. And knowing that you are going to be discussing the TIF grant programs and perhaps making changes to them, they wanted the opportunity to speak with you tonight. So at some point in your discussion, if we could allow them an opportunity.
Definitely do that.
And I would ask if, Scott, do you have anything to add to that TIF?
I've kind of outlined in my memo some ideas for what could be done for some changes in regards to the programs. I think the one of the things that I think that we've talked about that we're concerned about would be repetitive programs, repetitive requests for a single property. I think the idea behind going back in history with this TIF program, the idea behind it initially was to increase increment so that, when we're done with the project, the TIF project at the end of the day, 23 years later, we're actually generating a lot more property taxes, for the city and other taxing bodies. So, the idea initially, I think, was to develop the grant program that would do that, so they would increase the increment. Some of these don't do that directly, but some of them do. Like the sign grant, we did have a lot of discussion about that when that was created. I was here when that happened. And so, there's some concern about that, and that it's mobile. It's only affecting one entity, and that's why the funds are limited because of that. And it also has a clawback in that program. But I think one of the things that we've been concerned about is repetitive programs. We don't know that it's appropriate to use TIF funds for maintenance of properties when the property owners are neglecting it and they're just not doing normal maintenance like they should. Paint, for example, is one of the things we point out is that every 3 years or so, or 5 years, depending on how good your paint is, you're probably gonna have to repaint the building. I don't know that the city should be, in our opinion, is paying for that, because that's something that would just be a normal course of maintenance, a part of just being a building owner. So we wanted to talk about that. And then we also put some commentary in there about just grant limitations overall, in imposing a specific limitation for grants to say that you can only have one of each kind every 10 years. So we think you could have, a downtown improvement grant, a facade grant, and a sign grant all in a building. But we're suggesting that would not be any more than once every 10 years. The redevelopment agreements, those are a little bit different because those are kind of a case-by-case basis. And, there really should be some sort of pro forma to show that, there's no other way to do that but for the TIF incentive that we've been providing. And those are things that, in themselves would generate significant amount of additional increment, because of the fact that they're really new developments or, enhancing a building such that they're increasing the EAV substantially. So those are kind of a case-by-case analysis on those. If you look at the program guidelines that I attached also, there's some other things in there that we've not been following directly, just because, we've changed some of the programs over the years, but some other things in regards to, limitations on fundings versus what the actual value of the building is. So there have been other things that are in there. So obviously, it's up to the council on how you want to handle this. Right now, we would say we have, a good amount of funds depending on what else you may want to use those funds for. So if you want to use some of those TIF funds for streetscape or other improvements, then, those would have to be, considered as part of, any program. But ultimately, TIF 1 is going to expire in 4 years, so 3 years now. When that happens, there's a substantial amount of money that will be lost at that point because of most of our, or a big chunk of our TIF revenues are generated by TIF 1. So I think, no matter what we decide here tonight, probably in about 3 years when TIF 1 expires, we'll probably want to revisit it again to see, what we should be doing based on, what revenues we're actually generating at that point in time.
And TIF number 1 has approximately $100,000 budgeted for TIF grants. TIF number 3 has $140,000 budgeted for TIF grants. However, we are still obligated under the Walgreens redevelopment agreement. $65,000 of that goes to Walgreens, and so the remainder is what is available for the TIF grant programs, of which we're reviewing this evening. The annual TIF revenue for TIF number 1 is around $900,000. The annual TIF revenue for TIF number 3 is around $400,000. I would say, one of the major projects for which we would utilize the TIF funding would be for the additional demolition and the environmental remediation that will be done on the One Washington Place redevelopment site. Until we get in there and actually test the soils, we don't know how much of that needs to be taken to the special disposition site. And so the cost estimate for that, it's roughly $500,000. It could be $100,000 less than that. It could be $100,000 more than that. It's just unclear at this time. But TIF 1 funds could be used in order to pay for that remediation, because there are insufficient funds existing in TIF number 6 at this time.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or? Okay, Dan, go ahead.
Sure. So I guess I would start by saying I have always generally been in favor of this type of program, be it incentives, loans, something to assist businesses. I just recognize there is a lot of opportunity for abuse if we leave things too loose. We luckily have not had situations like that. My only real fear was that if we set up the ordinance to make it be so there's an incentive to not maintain your property, because the city could come in as a backstop and help you bail out a business owner that was purposely being neglectful. I would be concerned that we wouldn't want to set up a program that would allow for that kind of thing. We also have great latitude in deciding whether or not we want to approve these things in the first place. I recognize that has not been an issue so far, but I also say that there should be some guidelines to say maybe if a property is changing hands. I would think that when I bought my townhouse, if there were problems with it, like really big problems, I should go into that saying, well, I'm going to need X amount of dollars to tear this out and to fix this and to maintain this. There's a certain point where you're asking the seller to give you credits, and then it becomes a not responsible transaction. So I guess I would favor a business that's owned the property for longer as opposed to someone that's changed ownership recently. The only other thing I would add is regarding interest rates. This is not meant to be a money-making thing for the city. I wouldn't want to lose money on it beyond what it is that we're putting out, because we're trying to make an investment here. But it occurred to me, if this is truly a public-private partnership, we really shouldn't be competing with the banks. The banks give a loan based on creditworthiness, and they give a certain interest rate. We would like to acknowledge that in some cases, a bank might be more favorable to giving a loan if the city was kicking in a little bit to assist with something with certain projects. But at the same time, in this interest rate environment, I remember there were some loans where the interest rate was so low that it was almost laughable that we were even collecting interest in the first place. So I'm not sure I would tag it to LIBOR. I would just say, if that money could have been parked in a CD somewhere or a safe investment, we should at least be making that much money. But I wouldn't necessarily want to go as high as where commercial loan rates are. If I'm off the reservation on that, I'll go with what the group says. But that feels like a more fair way to do things.
Okay. Anybody else online have any comments? Okay, we'll start in here. Anybody in the room have comments? Joe?
I do. I have gone back and dug through some prior minutes from both the Community Development Committee back in 2008, 2009, as well as past committee of the whole, looking at some of the history on how these programs were started. My interest in this came about a couple of weeks ago. We had at a COW meeting, we resoundingly approved a grant, and then between a Friday night before the next city council meeting, a business owner came to me and said, hey, wait a minute, I'm being told no. And the reason she was being told no, I got to looking at it, there was some fuzziness within our guidelines. And that brought a lot of questions to me. If there's ambiguity in what we've got in our paperwork and in the rules we're asking people to follow, I think we need to clean that up. And I'm glad we're taking those steps. I know that back in August of 2015, there was a comment in the minutes that Alderman Brown had made, and it goes right to your point, Dan, about we're not wanting to encourage people to let their buildings go beyond repair. And what he had said was that this program was set up to encourage maintenance of buildings within the historic district that do have some added maintenance expense due to the age of the buildings. So when we talk about maintenance items, that's very narrowly focused to within the historic district due to the age of the buildings. And to me, that would be something we work with HPC on, to talk about maintaining buildings within the historic preservation guidelines and the added expenses that go into that normal maintenance. That would preclude the painting that you have to do outside of a building every so often. I think when you talk about maintenance of a building, that maintenance is very specific. Mm-hmm. When the business owner that approached me a couple weeks ago, I don't know that I would call it a maintenance issue. And I think there's another distinction we have to make between a property owner and a business owner. Sometimes the business doesn't own the property. So how do we define who gets the grant? Do businesses have a limitation on the number of grants and the amount of grants they can get over the life of their business? Or is it the property that's getting it? Because in this case, it's not the property owner that's going to benefit from having an improvement made, it's going to be the business owner. And that's kind of along the lines of, I thought that's what we were looking to do. Mm-hmm. This one, and it's no secret, it's Sidecar Supper Club. They bought the business that was called River's Edge, and now they want to change the name of their business. And they want the awning they have over the business to support that, to go along with the same thing. But in 2013, we gave the O'Briens a grant to put an awning at River's Edge. So here we are, 2021, the new business owner asking for a grant for the same thing. Is it the same thing? Is it a different business? Is it the same property? That's the ambiguity that I'd like to see us clean up and make it very clear so that everybody understands what the rules are. But at the same time, where does that leave somebody right now who's looking or has an application in that helped? I don't want to say it created the confusion, it highlighted the confusion. Mm-hmm. Where does that leave them if we make changes to our program?
Yeah, I think in the case of the one that you're mentioning, the concern was that the city funded that original improvement as part of the grant. And then they're basically the new request, even though it's the tenant, it was making a request for that exact same change. So 7 years later, we're being asked to fund a replacement of something we had already funded. So that's the one thing. In all the applications, the property owners are supposed to also sign the application. So it might be the tenant that is the actual applicant, but they have to be done with the consent of the property owner. So that's the only way they can do that, because under the program guidelines, the property owner is also supposed to be held to, if there's a clawback in the particular grant program that they have, that they understand that that's there, or that a lien can be recorded on the property. So they have to understand that can happen as part of this program if there's a default, or if the business closes within a short period of time or something like that.
I know, Scott, when I was looking back through, there were some some data that was provided, I think it was back at the end of 2013. There was some statistical evaluations done looking at businesses that had received grants. Were they still in business? How long were they in business after they received a grant? Is it possible to update that information so we can take a look at that to see, is it effective? Are we putting money in businesses that are sticking around?
Right. Yeah, we can prepare something for that. Yeah.
It'd be nice to know if our investments are paying off.
Exactly. I was just going to bring up the whole root of this conversation is, are we being good stewards of these funds?
Exactly.
You know, that we created a TIF that had a TIF redevelopment plan. And the idea was to utilize this funding in order to accomplish the goals of that plan. And so that's really the question that we're here to answer, and that would be a very good piece of data to be able to use.
Yeah, and I think that that's also important too, if we look back at those and we see, okay, how many times did one piece of property get different grants for different things, you know, to compare, you know, how many times was a different business in that property and asked for a grant, or how many times did we spend money on that property? I think one of the things that I've thought about as we do this is, because of the opportunities and because of the different buildings we have, and especially the downtown area, I think it's important probably to consider that there are opportunities within some of those buildings to do things that maybe don't fit everybody's idea of retail or sales tax generating business. But again, I think you have to look beyond just those two numbers, you know, a sales tax generator, or are they building a new building that's going to create that? I think if the area and in total comes up and there's empty lots within the same area, there's going to be the incentive for somebody that's going to come in and buy that property across the street, next door to it, wherever, and say, you know, I really want to locate down here because this place is busy every night of the week, or this place is really busy on weekends. I want to locate near that. I think that that's important, that we recognize that that's part of the reality of, I think, the way we have to look at redeveloping downtown. It can't all be retail. It can't all be offices. It can't all be everything maybe we think it should be, you know, in each and every property. So I think we have to look at the ability to bring the whole area up, not just worry about what's in every building, but realize that the opportunity that we've given to some there really has to be afforded to others. I mean, I don't want to pull out some specific ideas, but I'm going to, is that, you know, we've done it with restaurants. We've spent a lot of money in buildings. We've done loans for a lot of restaurants, and some of them live and some of them fail. So, you know, was that really good money? Some of it, yeah, it was great money. Others, not so much. And, you know, I look at, okay, there's others that have done phenomenal work to buildings and really created an area or added to an area that really makes people want to locate a business there or locate another building there or whatever, however you want to quantify that. And some of those weren't retail operations, you know, whether it be an office for a therapist or whether it be, well, I guess the countertop and kitchen store. Some of those are retail generating, you know, if they're billing all that out through there. You know, there's other things that we've done in different places with, you know, I'm trying to think of the other ones I want to talk about. But there are just a lot of things that I think have to play into this. And I think if we do set good guidelines for it, and even if we expand it into non-sales tax generating businesses, that can benefit the whole area. And I think that's something that we really have to be concerned about. I don't want to get into paying to paint somebody's business, or, you know, I think the point you made, Joe, about downtown and a lot of the older buildings, that is a different standard. When you tell somebody, okay, yeah, you can't go out to Menards and buy a window and put it in the front of your building, it has to be something that the HPC says is okay and can be in that building. That's different. That's different than just giving somebody money to put windows in. When you require a higher level or a different, you know, recommendation for that, that's something that, you know, if we're going to force people to do that and we have the money within that area, we should support that. I guess my biggest thing is I think we really have to think about how do we allow this to really help the entire area and not just really focus it in on sales tax generation or, you know, the actual increase in the TIF levy? Because I think that there's a lot of reasons that any building that gets improved helps the area. And, you know, also, we've got a lot of infill lots, a lot of empty lots that have been empty for a long time that I'd really like to see filled or work start to happen in some of those empty lots. And I think that, again, this is important for businesses that maybe can't afford to go into a brand-new building or don't need to be in a new building, that want just something that, you know, they can improve to the point where it becomes a better use of that property that helps the entire area.
Alderman Chance
And-
has his hand up.
If I may,
Dan?
oh, sorry. If I may, two things to think about with the improvements in the buildings, regardless of, whether it's a restaurant, retail, office, whatever. One of the premises of the program has been for permanent improvements and not tenant related improvements. And the idea behind that was to, not fund, ovens and things like that the tenants may be taking with them. So, we've been pretty following the guidelines of that, where the only things that qualify are things that are public safety, are ADA related, permanent building improvements that stay with the building. So as opposed to things that are equipment related and that type of thing. And then I would also note that if we have vacant properties, remember the TIF statute only allows us to fund certain things. It does not allow us to fund new buildings. So, you could do certain things with like engineering and grading and things like that. Those kind of things can qualify, but under state law, you can't fund a brand new building.
Right. And that's why I say the investment into the older buildings, the stock that's here, by making them better, makes somebody more willing to put money into an empty lot. And that's what I was trying to get across. I wasn't trying to say that we need to make sure that we have grants available out of the TIF to, get somebody to build a building. I think by fixing things around it, it makes it more enticing for somebody to want to do that.
Right. Different strategies to increase the increment, which is what we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to do.
Dan, do you have your hand up, or can you put your hand down if you're not going to talk?
No, I did actually. Scott just covered my part. My question regarding permanence. If you're placing money on things that another tenant could use,
Right.
I recognize we put a couple $100,000 into some buildings where the restaurant changed ownership over time, and I would recognize in my business client base, I think the national average is something like, I think it's 5 in 10 new restaurants don't make it past their 5th year. So, Joe, to your point about asking about are we getting return on investment in some of these cases, I wouldn't necessarily say that if a business didn't make it beyond 5 years, that was necessarily throwing money away, especially if it was a permanent improvement to the building that the next tenant would benefit from. I don't think that that's terrible. So I just want to make sure that if we're asking for numbers, that we discount it, or at least we don't beat up on restaurants too much, because the next restaurant that comes in has less to work with, or less that they need to work on, if they're going to move into a building that had some improvements that were made. That's all.
Well, and you and Scott both brought up a good point, permanency of a building. So we've had a couple of restaurants come in, some we've approved, some that are waiting to submit for an awning that had the business name on it. An awning is a permanent improvement to the building, but the minute they put the name of the business on it, it's now tied to the business.
Signage.
But it's signage, but we've used the facade grant to allow it. So is it being funded through the wrong program? Should that have been through the sign program rather than the facade program? Or should awnings not have names of businesses on them? And it gets back to, I'm going to advocate for Melissa. What do we do with hers? Hers is,
And that's an excellent question, because that's, that's really not something we've encountered before, to be honest, is whether or not that, if it's an awning that doesn't have anything on it, I think we certainly would have classified that part as part of the facade improvement. It's in the program guidelines. But if it's replacing just the fabric, maybe that could be construed as a sign improvement instead.
And that's what I was gonna say is maybe we have to look too at how we classify those. An awning by itself is a building improvement. An awning with a sign on it is a sign. With a name on it is a sign. And that
Right.
may be one of the ways that we allow, instead of every 10 years, say the business changes in 5 or 6 or 7 years and you want to change the name that's on the awning, then it becomes a signage grant. So
Right.
we classify it differently to be able to provide that assistance so that way it still makes sense. I think one of the things, we talk about a return on investment and how we can quantify that. I think one of the ways is if we spent money on a building or we've given a grant to a building, is the building still occupied? Doesn't matter if it's the same original restaurant or if it's the third restaurant in there. If it's still occupied and the money we put into it was for plumbing, kitchen work, bathrooms, ADA, whatever it was, electricity, that's the kind of thing that to me says we've got a return on it, is that the building is still occupied. If the building's vacant, then, did our help with the money to do whatever we did in the building, was that really a good thing? And if it's got sprinklers in it, then it's on the business that failed that was in the building, not us putting money into sprinklers in the building.
It used to be called the Sprinkler Grant Program.
We did have that for a
and it
little
kind of
while, and
sprung out from there.
that was one of the things. I mean, there are things that
pun
have been here
intended.
since I've been on the council that have gone away. The sidewalk, new sidewalk program we used to have, the sprinkler improvement or sprinkler grant program we had. There are things that are not there.
Let's talk about that sidewalk.
I believe me, I fought tooth and nail to put sidewalk in, so I know exactly, I'm with you on that. I think that, we need to focus on what we've got in front of us, and I think this is an important step to move forward, is to try to get some of these things better defined, classifications, that make more sense and easier to not put our community development department in a bind where they have to come to us as the city council to make a decision whether it's a building improvement grant or whether it's a signage grant. I think that that's part of the thing that we need to give, we need to be the body that makes the decisions and gives them the direction so that they can implement the things we want done with the money we have available. Abby?
You could look at an awning as an awning,
Right.
and here's the price of an awning, and for this much more, you can have your company name on it. So we could
Right.
look at that.
Because I believe the facade program offers more funding, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, than the
That's right.
signage program. So to your point,
Yeah, the facade
one would want to
program.
apply for the facade grant versus the sign. Scott?
Yeah, facade program offers up to 5,000. The signage program offers up to 1,000.
Right.
So, let's use an example. If the awning is there and they're just changing out the fabric, I would argue that that's just a sign, could be just a signage improvement, but not a facade improvement, because that's changing out the fabric as, for the business name.
Well, and the fact.
And awnings wear out. I mean, the fabric over time gets worn and, faded, and the letters peel off and things like that. So, there's, some question about some of that too.
Abby?
Scott, just to clarify, you had said that a building could receive all 3 of the grants, but just only one
Of a type.
every 10 years.
Right,
And it
exactly.
stays with
Right.
the property regardless if the property changes hands, new ownership.
That's what we're suggesting. Once every 10 years, that it would just per building. And so, there's property owners that own multiple buildings. And I know that there's some question about, well, is it fair for, Joe Blow developer to have 6 grants because they own 17 buildings? But from our standpoint, the owner of that is not necessarily, material. It's really the building itself, as I think we're looking at as the category to consider.
So my concern would be if someone was in one of our older buildings, gets a loan, gets a grant to do some interior remodeling to suit their needs for that moment, and then they decide to sell it, and the person that comes in changes uses, and then they need a sprinkler system, or they need to make those big changes, the things that we really want to encourage for the safety and for the health of our building stock, and then they're ineligible.
Yeah, and I think, from the standpoint of what we would require, I mean, most of those, renovations would require them to be sprinklered now as part of that initial renovation. So your second property owner that buys it later on probably wouldn't have to contend with that.
And is 10 years consistent with other cities and other programs like this?
Honestly, we haven't done any real research. All I can say is from my experience and another community I worked in, we just allowed one loan. We just allowed one grant per property. It didn't matter the term. But, we're suggesting 10 years because, things change, property owners change, uses change, so that we think that there should be some level of flexibility to with the 10 years on that. And keep in mind, we'll probably need to revisit this in 3 years because once TIF 1 expires,
Yep.
not only does that substantially reduce the eligible properties, but it also reduces our revenues as well.
There was a discussion in prior Community Development Committee meetings regarding the 14 years on tuck pointing. And at the time, the discussion was around, well, that's how much time's left on that TIF.
Mm-hmm.
And having it done once every 14 years was probably a relatively moderate amount of time for that type of work to be done. That's where the 14 years came from. So
that one we settled on. Yeah, that one we settled on because we and that staff actually recommended the tuck pointing, and there was some pushback from the council at that point to do any, and so we that's why it ended up being once per building on that particular improvement.
And that's when I can't think of the last time we actually had one of those come in for tuck pointing. It was very, very, very rare. I mean, when I first got on the council, it was pretty often, and now it's not. It's not been a thing.
I think River's Edge building did do some of that as part of their last renovation.
I just have a clarification question. When we're talking about the 10 years and the facade and everything, if we're saying that changing the name on the facade, is that considered a sign?
A name
And-
change would be a sign, but
Yes.
an
So
embellishment to the exterior of the building, such as the addition of that structure, is a facade improvement.
okay,
Two different things.
So like changing the fabric's going to be considered a sign, and so let's say 4 years from now, it's no longer a sidecar and it's somebody else. We're saying that we would then also grant a sign for that replacement.
That's what we're proposing, that the sign grant program, because it's not a ton of money, it's only $1,000. That if the business changes, essentially it would be every 3 years that property could have qualified, because right now we have a clawback in that for the sign if they don't use it somewhere else in downtown. So it
But
really
we've never-
depends if
We've never taken that step to
No.
get that clawback.
no, we have not
So part of your proposal was to eliminate that, so.
for the
as you
facade,
said,
correct?
Every
Mhm.
3 years, we could be giving this building $1,000.
Correct.
Very small investment.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, once we lose these TIFs and we don't have necessarily that much revenue, then we're in that challenge.
Oh, exactly.
And even if there was that proposed business, let's say they change their logo 3 years from now, are they going to be eligible to replace that? And we will have limited funds. Do we give it to the person that we've already given a grant to and they decide to change their logo and their whole name again? Or do we give it to somebody that's existing? And I think that's something that maybe we need to consider.
Well, and also realize in 4 years, you may not have a TIF grant program because we won't have a TIF to fund it.
Right.
Yeah, and you think about, the downtown is obviously a unique area. It's got a lot of, character. It's got a lot of older buildings. It's got a lot of, specialness that's, the heart of the community. We don't really have, grants for properties on Randall Road. So you get tenants that change on Randall Road, and there is no program for that. So, there is no, the downtown has an advantage because it does have that ability through the TIF district to fund some things that some other parts of the community cannot.
Well, Jenny, that's where I think it's important to understand the difference between, are we providing a grant to a property or providing a grant to a business? Because if it's to a business and they want to change their logo or rebrand themselves, we helped you the first time, it's the same place. That's
Right.
absolutely a limit.
And Abby brought up a great point too of somebody coming in and just remodeling and not doing those permanent things. I think that part of it should be, here are some things that are required. And if you meet all of these checks on a box of requirements, sprinklers and everything, then you can have it to make it the way that you want to, you know, within reason. But I just, you know, as I think long-term and think of the revenue available for this or the funds available for this lower and lower, you know, if we have an existing business changing brand or somebody trying to fill a vacant spot,
Which would you choose?
right, those are the decisions that we're gonna have to make. And, you know, as Alan said, maybe down the road, that we're gonna have to look at this and, you know, we wanna fill buildings. And,
One thing we had talked about years ago when we did this change in the program was whether we wanted to make this a competitive program. And, you know, we really frankly have not had enough interest to really make it worth that while to do so. But we are getting a lot more interest, and I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't, but, you know, that may be something that if we get, you know, 4 or 5, you know, do we make it a competitive program? The downside of that, of course, is that, you know, we'd probably have some type of an application period. And if they're ready to go now and they can't get an application for a grant till 6 months from now, then, you know, that's obviously not helpful to them.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had more grants than we've had money for,
Right.
you know, in our budget for each year. I mean, has there been a year that we've exceeded or we've had used all the budget within the last
Yes.
5 years, Scott?
No, I think the last time, if I remember right, was like 2013, not long after I got here. I think we had to budget some additional funds.
Yeah,
So
it's been quite a while. So, I mean, that's something that, again, we need to promote this. Well, we still have it. We really need to promote this. And especially with, you know, one Washington, some other things happening in town, we really need to promote these to get people to do things in the buildings that we've got.
But like you said, let's make it easy on staff with very clear definitions so that we don't have to have different people's interpretations, so that it's a real easy yes, no. Make it easy on staff.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any other comments?
Yeah, I'm curious about that was my last question, was about the service businesses, so I'll tell.
Yep. Well, now I'd like to open it up to the audience. Everybody that's been sitting, listening to all of this, if you want to come up and use the mic up here, all we need is your name, for those that might not know you.
Name and address, Ralph S.
No
Beck,
address.
303 Meadow Rue Lane, Batavia, Illinois. Good evening, council members. I own the 1976, which is 7 years after I got back to Batavia to begin my law practice. I purchased the building at 228 East Wilson Street, and it was a 2-story building at that time, rather run down, too flat. And I completely remodeled the building. Inside, we gutted it, inside and outside, and I'm still using that as of this day. I retired about 3-4 years ago, but I still have the building, and I go down there every day. There's nothing going on in there right now. Okay, this is for further located. It's the red 2-story building at the top of the Wilson Street Hill, right next to the Wilson Street Mercantile. I'm on the extreme eastern side of the proposed new TIF 6 district. I'm already in the TIF 3 district. And I would rather expect that I was included in the TIF, because this building of mine I've had it for 45 years, and I've done pretty good maintenance on it, but it's out of mode now, and it's kind of run down and everything else. The parking lot, I have about 6 parking spaces in the back. I have my own parking, which is somewhat unusual for some businesses these days. But at any rate, the assessed valuation is really quite low on this building at this particular point. In fact, the land is assessed at 1/2 of the total valuation, so the building needs some work. Now, I'm not asking for a grant or anything myself. I've got a contract with Mr. Tom Gosselin. He'll be addressing you next. He's very interested in coming in and redeveloping the property completely, and he'll tell you a little bit more about that. This is the type of thing that will greatly increase your property tax, your assessed valuation, My guess is it'll probably go up at least double, possibly more than that. And it'll be a nice improvement to that part of the building, or to that part of the town right now. You've got the new Wilson Street Mercantile there. If this one gets fixed up, there's another one. And you're going to have, they're not too far away, of course, from the one in Washington Place, and right next to the Mercantile on the other side, we got the open property. But this would help to extend this type of a use. So I think at this particular point, I want to give you a little history of the building. The building is currently, it's over 100 years old. Interestingly enough, I'm not sure how far, but I have a joint driveway easement for the property to the east of me that was recorded back in 1914. So I think it probably is a fairly elderly property, to say the least. But Tom is going to, and I have a contract with Tom, and so I say any grants that he would be asking for be for him, because I'm certainly not asking for some. So Tom, do you want to come forward?
Tom Gosselin, 947 Robin Drive in Batavia. So just to follow up on a few things Ralph said, and the reason we're here is, and I've got plans that I'll hand out in case anyone's interested to see them along with parking, is we've been talking with staff about grants, TIF money, to help with the cost of construction and what would be an office building. So it would be 4 independent offices within the building that would be rented, perhaps a couple other smaller workstations with a few shared conference rooms. When we went to the city, I think staff was well accepted on the project. The issue we had is that it's neither residential nor sales tax generating.
Do you want me to hand those out for you, Tom?
Pardon? Oh, sure, that's great. And while you're at it, I'll also give you, parking plan. So part of this, the building to the west of Ralph's property currently has some of the kiosk businesses that have relocated. So I know that was part of the city plan to hopefully have those businesses start and then relocate elsewhere in the, within the downtown area, hopefully. So the parking, when you look at that, was a joint plan between that property owner and myself on not necessarily shared parking, but parking that certainly would be shared by both businesses. So as far as a TIF project goes, traditionally, really what they're looking at, I think, is the increase in the sales tax. And as Ralph said, I think the tax bill's currently around $4,500. I would agree. The hope is that the property would be worth, if appraised, maybe $300,000 or so when done. So I think the tax bill certainly would double. I'm not sure for this new TIF district the number of years that are paid into that TIF, but if it's $4,500 a year, hopefully it would be a good income generating property for the TIF. The project as a whole would be, and I'm been working with a contractor in town, would be basically everything down to the studs. The building would then be redone inside and out. So this is not awnings, this is new electrical, new plumbing. On the plans in the rear, there's a handicap lift to give handicap accessibility, muchly improved parking. So this is definitely a permanent project and not one of these more minor ones. It's a 100-year-old building in a historic district. When you look at a traditional TIF project, this is really kind of the poster child for it. While it's not sales tax generating, the people who are working there, along with all the clients who might come in, 4 different businesses, so it could be attorneys, insurance agent, investment people. I have a dozen people come visit me each week, and those people will be in town buying gas and having lunch, clients going out to lunch at the downtown businesses. As well, I think coupled with the improvements to the property to the west, it will benefit that business as well. So when we went to staff, we were told that other than the facade grant, that would be 5,000, we were not really eligible for either TIF money or the inside improvement grant. Signage, yes, but as we've talked about, that's a smaller grant. The problem that we've run into in particular, as I'm sure everyone's heard, with the increase in construction costs over the last year, or really even over the last 6 to 9 months, has made it harder and harder to make the numbers work. So really the purpose of coming in, from talking to staff, we heard about the meeting, and I suppose my request would be in any of this that there's a little bit more flexibility when possible for either TIF money or some of the other grants. I know it would help my business, well, this project, I would say, and would probably help other projects that are good for the city, but might not fit that sales tax recipe that we've got currently.
Scott, can I ask you one question?
Sure.
After Tom's done here, would this not qualify as like a redevelopment if we were to have a redevelopment agreement with them where we would do a grant or a loan on this? Because it's pretty much a complete rebuild of the building.
Yeah, and what we've done for the redevelopment agreements in the past is we've done it where it's twofold. One is you get a grant that's the $25,000, and then you have the $100,000 that's a loan. So that's what we've typically given out, to Gaetanos, to Alianos, a lot of those, those are the types of things that we had for those types of projects. So the issue was that those were restaurants, those were retail sales tax generating entities, and this was not. Now, if the direction is that we want to do that for any building, then certainly that's something we could consider. So it's just the way we've understood the guidelines and everything that are in there is that it really was intended for only restaurants and sales tax generating type of entities.
Okay, because I think that, in my mind, granted, I know that the TIF has finite, whether it's, newer TIF or an older TIF, it has a finite time frame and a finite, amount of money that's created. But if we increased the EAV of the property to the point where, the money that we put in over the long term does generate money back into the TIF, which is what we want it to do. That's the whole point of the TIF, is to increase the EAV. And then at the end of that, everybody benefits from it. The school district, the park district, the city, everybody benefits at the end of it. That, to me, makes more sense than just giving money to businesses to put up signs or to repaint, or, redo their facades when they change a business. This is a permanent addition to the EAV within the city. Right. So to me, this is the one that makes sense when I look at a TIF and think, if I want to justify a TIF to Yvonne or anybody that comes in here bashing TIFs, this would be the one that I would say makes the most sense to me, is that we're putting money into a building that increases the TIF roughly by 2/3. And I look at that and think, okay, that in my mind is really easy to justify to anybody, that's a good use of the TIF money. Regardless if Tom's in that building for 5 years or 10 years or 50 years, that building will be there for that entire period. And I think that's the best return on investment we could make, would be to improve that. I mean, when we look at somebody that puts $50,000 or $100,000 into a sprinkler system, every building on that block benefits because that building is sprinklered, and if anything happens, the chances of it spreading anywhere else are so much less. And that, to me, is a really good use of the TIF money or any other grant or money we would spend. And again, when I look at it, a lot of times I think of it, okay, if we're going to do something different or we're going to change our parameters for these, how easy is it to say this is a good thing to somebody? How easy is it to justify to the average citizen that says, wow, why did you give that guy $25,000 to build this building? Right now, as it sits, we only get, what'd you say, $4,500, we think, off that property in taxes, and that's a total. That's not what the city gets, but that's what the total property tax bill is. So you increase it to 300,000, and I look at my tax bill and I think that's going to be 10 grand at least. So, you know, the reality of what that does to the valuation of the city is a good thing. And that, I think, is what we're trying to do with this. So I'd be in support of trying to figure out how we can keep it within the guidelines and a framework that community development can use when talking to somebody that proposes something like this and makes this happen, so that way, in the amount of time we have left in the TIFs, we get the biggest bang for the buck of getting buildings rebuilt or built new or whatever that creates the biggest increase to the EAV. Because at the end of the TIF, that's what we really wanted to do, and that's what we, or at least I feel like we justified out when we said, yeah, we're going to create a TIF, or we're going to extend a TIF, or whatever we're going to use a TIF for. This is what it's meant to do. You know, we've got huge buildings built over here that previous councils took a lot of heat on. But the amount of money that they've provided to the city in this downtown, there's a lot of things that would have never happened without that money. So the reality is, I think, again, this is something that's going to be here beyond all of us. If this house gets rebuilt and we're part of that and we can make that happen, it's going to be here another 100 years. So I think that that's important, that maybe it's not exactly what we designed these grants for 10, 15 years ago, but this is what TIF's supposed to do.
Well, and that's why, you know, we've been talking about this, and, you know, with, you know, the new ED person coming in, is we did want to, you know, raise these things with the council, because obviously, you know, there was a totally different council when I last discussed this. I think only 2 people on the council were there at the time. So, you know, so we had, you know, a different point of view and a different thought process on some of these things. You know, there was some, it was a real fight actually to get even the sign grant program approved, and some of the tuck pointing. So, I mean, there was, you know, a difference of philosophy back then, and, you know, obviously with the new council, I think there may be some changes to that. And, you know, if that's not reflected, if the current program is not reflective of what the council wants, obviously we need to make some changes to it.
I think this one goes to exactly what we talked about before these 2 gentlemen got up and spoke. It's making a substantial improvement to the building itself. It's going to last for a long time. And like you said, Alan, it raises the property value, which raises everybody's tax revenue. And it's not just asking somebody to pay more taxes. They're building a nicer building in an area that we love to see development in. I think it's all positive signals. It's everything we're looking for. This is an easy decision.
And every time the EAV goes up, to keep the taxes and the things the same that we want in town, everybody's rate doesn't have to go up. To do it when we do it by increasing the EAV.
And this is even more of a universal use too, than if you're thinking, there were some comments, like if a restaurant comes in, then you want to change it out in a couple of years. I mean, this is a general use that can be used by tons of businesses. I mean, it's not something that would be solely something for like a restaurant. You know, if it's a restaurant, what are you going to do? It has to be a restaurant, unless you completely change it out. This could be something that can be utilized for all kinds of different businesses.
It could be a sales office for a concrete company, and they could actually bill all of their concrete through that office, and we'd get all the tax money from it. Yes, that was a...
Go get a tenant. There's a tenant.
That's where you're going with that one.
Those that know.
Yes.
Abby?
Thank you for bringing up the point that it came to mind when I read this, that offices and non-service businesses would be included, because I think about going to lunch downtown Batavia sometimes and how the restaurants are dead, that there's not a lot of activity because there's not a lot of people working downtown Batavia. And to get that steady stream of people at all hours of the day, we need to support some office uses. So I was, even if you're not generating sales tax, then I would certainly hope that they're walking around to downtown restaurants and supporting them there. And I think that's really important, so.
And exactly, not only the people who are working there, but the clients that are coming in, they're going to be out and about. To Chris's point, absolutely, there are many, even post-COVID, there are going to be people who need office space. They're going to need some place to meet with clients. It's really versatile for any type of business that you might have unless they need a warehouse or something like that. It's a model that you see with the ability to just rent office, a conference room. There's that option as well. So I would agree completely that this is a long-term and not a short-term. It's not something where it depends on any certain restaurant surviving or not. Even if there's going to be a potential new restaurant coming in, I think this is much more likely to, again, fit the traditional mode where the assessed value is going to go up, and that's going to continue long after the TIF is done. So I would agree. No surprise.
I know this is like really a long, long dream of mine, but I've followed this group, and one of the trends in the hospitality industry is called Mint Housing. And it's kind of like an Airbnb, but it's owned by this company called Mint. And so they, like One Washington Place, they would own some of those and people could rent those. And I see it as somebody coming in and renting that and then coming and renting your office space for a conference call. Like, and then they go on a river walk for some, you know, regional entertainment and recreation, so.
Created by our master river plan.
Well, and the adjacent property owner had also discussed, and I think it was more a staging area for the farmer's market, and that with the parking area that would be behind this, that it's a great area for them. It was his idea, and I'm all for it. So there are other, I think, community benefits that go with improving the property. Not to mention it's on the main drag in town. People are, you get to that stoplight and you get stuck at most time, and it's right there. So certainly I think just visually it's great for the city. Have a new building.
Well, and the thing is, I think, you know, as COVID has produced a lot of changes in the housing and the office and even retail markets, I think things are going to change over the next 5 years, where what everybody thought was the normal model is not going to be the same. And you might have an office that's rented by 5 different people that work out of their house, but they need to have a meeting space, you know, once a month or once a week. They have to have a meeting. They don't have to have an office downtown Chicago anymore, but they need to meet with clients that maybe come in from San Diego or come in from out of the country, and they need a place like that to be. So that could be one of the things we deal with, you know, and I won't call it a transient office, but something like that would be.
Yeah, I mean, there's a regis of the co-housing or the co-working kind of facilities that are there. I think, you know, those kind of crashed a little bit because people weren't going into offices, but I think that you're right. There's going to be a demand, and that's going to come back. I think there's probably going to be demand for more space, just physical space between people also, you know, because the cubicle model, I think that may change, where I think a lot of these businesses are not going to want to cram so many people in so much space anymore.
We also have to, you know, remember our manufacturing businesses, you know, a lot of those are regional. And so when corporate comes in, if they have like discussions that they need to have outside of the building because of anything that may be going on, it would be ideal to have a space to meet at, and then, you know, even for contract negotiations.
Absolutely.
And then they, you know, order out food.
Or if the office is virtually, you know, within 5 blocks of 10 different restaurants, they have their choice of what they want to go to, and they don't
Just
lose any
walk down
commute
the hill.
time to get there. So I think that's also a benefit. So I would definitely say that I think one of the things we need to look at in changing some of this is to allow for something like this. I mean, I think this is a great project to kind of highlight one of the things that I think we should change in it, because the increase in EAV is really what, you know, other than public-private improvements or utilities that TIF has paid for over time, this is one of the things that's the whole idea.
Right.
You know, if this building can come in and, you know, I don't know what it would be over the life of the TIF or the whatever, you know, whatever time is left in this TIF, what that would generate from today to then, you know, if let's say it's a $25,000 TIF grant, can't imagine that this thing doesn't generate $25,000 over the life of it. And that, again, gets back to your return on investment. If it makes $50,000 in 23 years or 25 years, it's totally worth doing that. And everybody that works in that building to me, is another customer for downtown. And again, you know, if only 10% of the people that walk into this building go somewhere in town, that's a win.
In this case of this building, because this was included in TIF 6, we actually have quite a bit of time left. So
So it would generate, it would potentially.
22
generate
years, basically
well-
22 years of revenue.
Yeah, well more than $25,000 of a grant, so.
Right.
Okay, I'm satisfied with, you know, looking at this and thinking that, you know, that, not that it was in the memo, but this is one of the changes I'd like to see us make in this program. Because again, I think this creates what we want. Added EAV and new opportunity for a building that's just been there for 45, 50 years in current condition.
Easily done.
Think you can figure that one out, Scott, and get that in
Oh, yeah.
for us? Okay,
Yeah.
then-
I mean, what I can do, I mean, if there's other feedback, you know, let me know. But, you know, I put in some suggestions, you know, for the different programs and some changes we could make to them. But if you have other suggestions, you know, for us to make, we can incorporate those. But what I can do is put together a draft of, you know, what the proposed changes would be in the individual programs, and then, you know, bring it back to you for additional comment and direction.
Okay, I think we can do that, and then get it through another cow meeting, and then send it off to city council.
Great.
Okay,
Wonderful.
Will do.
Thank you.
thanks for the plans.
Thanks.
Cool looking idea. Okay. Pull my agenda back up. And now we will go on to a presentation from the Batavia Environmental Commission, who has very, very patiently been waiting to come in and talk to us.
And Alan, I'm back.
Oh, Leah's back now? I think we've seen and heard from the Environmental Commission more in the last 2 months than we have in the last 2 years. Not that that's a bad thing.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's good to know what you guys are
I'm
doing.
Carolyn Burnham. I am the longest-serving member of the Batavia Environmental Commission, although I feel like I really haven't lived here all that long compared to a lot of people in this town. And we're really happy to be here under different circumstances as well. We've spent a lot of time with you over the past couple of months online and otherwise. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been up to this past year. Granted, the pandemic did slow us down like everyone else, so we had a pandemic pause. For those of you that are newer, the Batavia Environmental Commission has been around since about 2006. We can go to the next slide. It's comprised of 7 members. We had 5 members up until 2019 when we realized that we could have 2 more. Now we're down a member, unfortunately, but we have a lot of nice applicants that are looking to join the commission. With me tonight, I have 4 members, including myself. We have Alex and Andrew Deachman back there, and Andrew Greenhagen's here somewhere.
I saw it.
So he is the chair of the Environmental Commission. We can move to the next slide. So these are some of the things that we did after kind of a short break because of the pandemic. In August, we co-hosted a Solar Power Hour webinar with Solarize Chicago. This was in conjunction with the Citizens Utility Board and solar installers, just to kind of explain information about residential solar for residents of the Fox Valley. And I want to make sure everybody knows that we have a Facebook page and a website. The city helped us develop a website in 2019, and we moved everything that was on the city's page onto our page that year. So there's a lot of information there. Our Facebook page we have about 1,500 followers right now, which is about 180 when I started. So we've worked really hard to get people interested in the page and share information there. So I encourage all of you to like our page. We do regular posts. On Monday, we do recycling. On Tuesday, we have tips, and we have volunteer opportunities and events on Wednesdays. Thursdays is usually about electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging and things like that. So take a look at the page. I really, we share a lot of great information about the community there. So one of the other initiatives that we started in 2018 was the electric vehicle charging station rebate. And it's been a little slow going for 3 to 5 permits from 2018 to 2020. But already Gary said that there is 6 permits for 2021, so it's looking out for more electric vehicle adoptions for Batavia. So more ways to use the electricity that we are currently contracted to buy. For Green Night Out at the Movies, last year it was scheduled on, I believe, March 20th, which we had to cancel because of the pandemic. So we waited almost a whole year to reschedule the event, but it turned into a really, really nice event. This is the 11th time we've done the event. It usually takes place in City Hall in March. And we featured a really great panel of experts this year. Gary Holm headlined the event, as I say. So I told him he could speak for as long as he wanted. And it was truly a lot of great information shared. You can't go back to our Facebook page and find it, but you'd have to sort through about 2 hours of material to get to it. But it was a really, really interesting discussion that night about alternative energy, electric vehicles and electric vehicle and electric infrastructure. So it was a lot of topics that are hot in this community right now. So one of the items that we've been working on for a couple of years is the Fabian Woods South Restoration Workdays. And this was a project of Anna Baker that left the commission just in the past month or so. It was temporarily halted due to COVID-19, but she's kind of brought it back up and we're doing some work days. We will continue to support this effort. This is along Route 25 in Batavia, and she is the site steward through the Cane Forest Preserve for this project, so we will continue to work with her on it and publish the event so we can get people to help move that project forward. This was number 6. This is the second year of the Green Business Oli Award. This year the winner was Green Seed Contract Packaging, with the honorable mention was Soma Studio. Anna also was great in procuring trees for us for the past couple of years, little saplings to help people plant oak trees. So she got 200 trees total, and she gave them away in April. And we finally just planted ours last week, so we hope it survives. Do you want to talk about this? Okay. Alex here is working with the Conservation Foundation on a pet waste campaign. So you can take a look at that on our Facebook page. He's also, and I think you've probably noticed if you get the city e-blast that there's a lot of environmental information there each month. I think Griffin and everybody's been great in letting us share a lot of information. It's a coordinated effort with the Batavia Park District. And they're going to do 10 scoop and poop signs for placement along the river trails as they get people to clean up after their pets, because it does have an impact on the environment. Are you doing this one? Okay. Alex is taking.
Yeah, as Carolyn said, it is really nice to be here in person and be talking about all the great things that we've done and what we're doing. So upcoming, we are hoping to actually do our wildflower walk this year. Last summer's walk was canceled due to COVID. Fermilab is currently still not open to the public, but we'll see as the season continues. I think the walk in 2019 was really well attended. There were a lot of people there, so it was great to see people out learning about our wildflowers. We are also getting ready to launch a Batavia Big Tree program. If you're familiar at all with the Kane County or the Illinois Big Tree programs, it's a way to kind of a friendly competition, but find the biggest specimen trees for tree species within our state or within the county, and we'd like to do that also within the city. We've talked with the Forest Preserve District of Kane County to hold a training which would qualify people to be able to nominate trees for the Kane County program, and then also us as the stewards of the Batavia Big Tree program to be qualified to do that. The goal would be to educate our residents about trees, the importance of trees in our community, and also encourage them to get outside, especially as the weather is improving. And also from a scientific perspective, it would contribute to our urban forest data set, which I think also supports the tree city status that we have. So we are working with the Batavia Tree Commission. They've agreed, since they have a couple arborists, to assist with species ID, collect data, and manage that as well. The water willow planting is an opportunity that was brought to us on behalf of the Illinois Sport Fishing Association. I will be bringing more details to you shortly, but I just wanted to point this out as an opportunity that we would really like to pursue to help improve the ecology of the river corridor. So I know that probably requires some additional discussion, and I did mention it to the park district, and they seemed interested in doing this as well, but just wanted to throw that out there so you're aware. And Andrew, talk about water.
Hey everybody, my name's Andrew Deachman, and I've been on the commission for 2 years now, so I appreciate the opportunity to serve in this way. So we did the Wyland Mayor's Challenge with Water Conservation Program. That's a national program, and it promotes the saving water and recognizing that it's an important resource. So the cities kind of compete with each other. You sign up, and there's a pledge page, and you go through these things, and then it tracks how much water your community saves, and at the end, they post the results. I'm waiting to see how we did. The mayor was kind enough to record a message for us for Earth Day that promoted this program. We put it out on the Facebook page, and it asks, as I mentioned here, it asks everybody to kind of pledge how much water they're going to save, and you can see how much your footprint is at your home, and then you say, hey, I'm going to do all these things, and this is how much we're going to save. And then the communities all get tallied up, and you get compared against communities that are similar sizes. So we'll see how we did, and I think this is something that goes on year-round. They tally the results just for April, but it goes on year-round, and then we can compete again next year and see how well we do. So, and those were the programs that we've got coming up for the next year. Besides your interaction with you all on council and the questions you all bring to us and the responses we try to give back to you and give some feedback as they come through you and come through staff. We have our website, as Carolyn mentioned, that got migrated over, so we keep things on there. There's a blog on there with some activities and information about what we're doing. Facebook page, Carolyn updates that page all the time. There's all sorts of really good information on there, and lots of people are interacting with that. We have our meetings, second Wednesday of the month at 7 o'clock. Once COVID's over, we're meeting in person. It's here in the one of the conference rooms here. Otherwise, right now, they're still on Zoom, and those are all facilitated by city staff, and we really appreciate that. But I guess that's it. We would just say to the community, come out to our events. We'll be at farmers markets and other events around. We're passing out information, and then any of the events that we're hosting, we'd love to have you all come out and help us. If you all got any questions, I guess, for the committee, Andrew, our chair, is here too, so Greenhagen.
I'd just like to say I think it's interesting the planting out along the northern end of the islands out there. Being a bass fisherman and have spent quite a few times in the river here, that'll be really interesting to see how that works. And I think that's also something that we should probably make sure we integrate that when we get into the river stabilization and everything else, because any type of vegetation in the river will really help fishing.
Alan?
Your Honor?
Yeah, I'd just like to speak a little bit about planting grass on these gravel bars in the middle of the river. And one in particular is the one that's immediately south of the Wilson Street Bridge, north of the island. That wasn't supposed to be there. And we have people that work for the city that no longer work for the city because that was there, as far as I'm concerned. That was created when we rebuilt the Wilson Street Bridge, and they put what's the term when you block off the river?
Cofferdam.
Cofferdam around it. And the cofferdam was supposed to be removed out of the river. And then somebody in the city staff made the decision, well, let's just let it go down the river and float. And so we let it go down the river and float, and it got down to that location, and in the river bank underneath the water there, there's I believe it's three different utilities that are in that. So there's these big hedges in the water down there. So there's like these areas where this rock flew down, and it got caught up between a gas line, electric line, and a sewer line that are buried in the river. So we can't go out there. If I had had my way, I would have had a bulldozer out there taking that rock out of the river, but we can't go out there now because it's laying on top of all this stuff that's the main sewer line going to the west side, east side, and we have gas line and everything else. You can see where the gas company's markings are on both sides of the river is right where that is. So I guess it's going to be there. I get very upset every year, and the city public works has to go out there in the middle of the river and pull logs and bicycles and everything else that float down there because it's a very unsightly area for the city. And we've tried very hard and spent millions of dollars to make this riverbank very attractive. And I'm very proud, thanks to the cooperation of you guys, of what we've done here. Now, I'm not saying I'm totally opposed to this idea, but I got to tell you, I think we got to be very careful what we do with it, because I don't want that thing to turn into some kind of a marsh of weeds out there that everybody then looks to the south of the river, and, you know, that's a big attraction point at Christmas time with the Christmas tree we have down there, which has become a 100-year community tradition. And so you don't want necessarily that kind of ugliness sitting there right in front of the Christmas tree. That's where I'm kind of coming from. And I'm told by those in the world that, you know, over a period of years, that rock will gradually kind of drift off and go away. I had some people suggest to me we ought to hire the Batavia football team to go out there and just pick it up and throw it in different directions on the river to kind of bring its height down so that it doesn't is visible, because when the river's up, it totally disappears. But that's just, as you can tell, it's kind of a burr on my saddle that happened, and I was not at all happy, and I was not part of that decision that we were going to let that cofferdam float down there, and as far as I was concerned, we were going to get bulldozers and unloaders in here and trucks and haul it out of the river and be done with it, but that's not what happened.
Your Honor,
Yeah.
I'll respectfully disagree with you. I think it's a happy mistake, because for those of us that like to fish down there, that's actually really, at the right times, when the water levels are right, that is an incredible spot for smallmouth bass. So to me, it's a good thing.
Well, as long as we can keep it appearing okay. But
Right, and the river's gonna do what it wants to with that area. So the current and everything will change that, and basically, in some ways, I think it actually helps the islands to stabilize it, because it does divert the water away from the head of that island that's there. So it will hopefully help that a little bit too.
Yeah, and if I can say too, you know, we didn't intend for this to become a discussion on if we're gonna do the plantings or not. I just wanted to bring it, it's just kind of an initial heads up that we will bring you guys more information to hopefully educate about what this would do, what the plant is, how the plant behaves, how it grows, what the benefits are. And these are discussions that we would definitely have before we would move forward with anything.
Joe?
Having lived over on the east side for 25 years, when I saw the work that was started on Fabian Woods, I wondered who was doing it, because it was like, oh, good, all that underbrush is going away. Look how nice that looks. And now I know who's doing it. Thank you. And now that I know Anna's heading that up still, I'll reach out to her and find out when you're going to be working so I can get my gloves and come over. It's awesome. It looked really nice when when that project started. It was incredible.
Yeah, and we post all of those on our Facebook page, and we usually post calls for volunteers. We didn't do much this year because there were so many limits on the number of people who could work during the pandemic that we weren't able to promote it, but we will continue to do that because, yeah, a lot of great work's been done on the Geneva side and on the Batavia side.
Thank you.
I just have a question about the plant program. You're like, oh no. Can that work in other areas than just the river, like all the streams that we have, and does it help with potential flooding?
This particular species that they're talking about, I think really is meant for some of the larger streams and rivers. I'm not sure how well it does in a pond environment that has more stagnant water. But I mean, I think that those are discussions that we can have with the group that is proposing this. Because it is a sports fish association, I think their intent of this planting is to support, as Alan said, the fish within the river and provide habitat. So.
Still more. Carolyn, you do a great job with the website or with the Facebook page. I like follow in every day. It's new, and even during the pandemic, you did a great job. Like, I always go there for all my information. Just one question, and I know one thing that when we met, you talked about plastic bags. Is that still an initiative that you guys are looking to pursue?
It's on our radar for sure. I think with the pandemic and everybody forced into using plastic bags, it felt unfair to come up with something to tell people that we want you to stop using them. So I think most of the companies are transitioning to allow people to bring their own bags. Yeah, it is on our radar. We didn't feel like maybe we should talk about it tonight. But not only us, but Geneva and St. Charles and other communities in this region are considering efforts to try to incentivize reducing our plastic bag usage. And not just plastic bags, but single-use plastics as well. You know, talking to restaurants and kind of trying to do an educational campaign to try to not always use all the plastics that come with it, all the condiments, all the different things, to try to formalize a way where people can ask for if they want it. And we did that a little bit with the straws, and there's a lot of restaurants downtown that are using paper straws instead of plastic, and that all started with Abby, just bringing them to the different restaurants, and they tried them out, and they worked. So sometimes, you know, they just need a little push and a little help to get them to the next step. But yeah, with the pandemic, it was a really hard time to try to think about that. But we definitely, it is on our radar, and trying to find the best plan for that without feeling like we're inconveniencing people. But I think we're over the hump, maybe, of not allowing people to bring their own bags into stores, and knowing that the pandemic isn't spread that way.
And finally, you know, with the whole discussion about, you know, the carbon footprint and all of us do, you know, we have that big, you know, of course, with the energy plants and everything that are the big one. I know that I can't control the plants, but there are things that I can do individually that can do that. And I would love to have your group bring those ideas and challenge us almost on a monthly basis. One thing that I thought of that I thought would be kind of cool, and I love this whole thing with the water conservation campaign and where we at now and how can we get better next year. I would love to maybe see some sort of, you know, joining of you in the bicycle commission, like next year during bicycle week, where there's like a competition of let's track how many miles we bike to record how we saved our footprint on that. And then, you know, do it year after year. Can we get better? Can we get better? You know, I would love to see those ideas that we can do, what we can do within a community, and have things that we can measure and present to the community and go, can we do better than this next year on that? And I know the plastic bags is one of those things that is there. So please come to us with that. I'm asking. I'm sure Abby would be on board with that, and some other aldermen would be on board with that.
Sure, those are great ideas, and it's nice to see council asking for them as well. So we appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job. I have another one. We
Abby?
have one more minute. In terms of bringing up old stuff, right? A couple of years ago, we were talking about, and it came up a little bit when we were talking about the energy stuff, is some more of the EV readiness codes preemptively. Maybe it's a moot point if energy legislation goes where it goes, but we had talked about possibly working into new building codes for new homes and new multifamily to have just the conduit run so that somebody could easily run the cabling necessary to hook up an outlet in their garage, and how it's a couple $100s on the building side, and it's a couple, what was it, $6,000 estimated if you're going to do it retroactively. So I don't know if that, just gonna sprinkle that one back out there too. If you guys
I would love that campaign
wanted to
for
bring that
people
back.
to understand that as they move towards that thought process.
Well, that would be something we'd have to change in our code
Right.
to
Right.
make it standard.
If that is something that you guys would support, I would encourage you to make that request of city staff as well, because we've been in conversation with them, and I know they're have a lot on their plate. So if that is a priority of yours, please make it known to them, because we've had that discussion, and the time just hasn't been right to kind of surgically make that change. We were waiting for more of a global update. But if that is something you'd like to move ahead with sooner than the global update, I think they would like to hear that from you.
Yeah, and I think that you make the point that I think that may be something that comes out of the Clean Energy Jobs Act or whatever it morphs into by the time it gets in front of the legislature to pass, that there may be a component of that. I know in a lot of other states that I've seen this happen, I have relatives in other states that they had to run a single separate line into their house because it had to be a separate service because it was metered differently and it was subsidized by the state to run the line and to pay for the electricity on it. So I think that there depends on what happens out of the legislature, whether or not that becomes an edict from them or whether we get to make that choice. But I think you're right. I think in new construction, that may be something we have to look at, and maybe with one of the building code updates that we do, that may be, something to talk about at that point, because that would be the time to do it.
Right. Make it easy.
Right, and do it in a revamp of the building code. That would be the time to add something like that. Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is item number 9, which is resolution 21-55-R, authorizing execution of task order number 3 with HR Green for the Mahoney Creek watershed-based plan. I know Alderman Rosado is not here tonight, I don't believe.
I believe I'm vice chair.
You are vice chair. I was just going to say, you have your mic.
I guess that's what I get for missing the meeting, huh?
Well, now you get to step up and present something tonight.
Yep, exactly. No problem. I just can't see any can't get to select for discussion, so you might have to help me out with that, Alan.
Okay.
This is a follow-up from last year. We got the watershed concept plan from HR Green along with AES. The Mahoney Creek, as I like to think of it, as the Mike O'Brien Mahoney Creek watershed. This is the next step is planning is to prepare a watershed based plan. By doing this, would make us eligible to apply for other some grant money. So I'm fully in support of that. And it's coming in with under budget. 65,000 was budgeted, and the consultant amount would be 64,900. Further, any discussion on this? If anyone from staff wants to chime in, please feel free.
I think the one thing that I wanted to point out on this one was that there's also Clean Water Act Section 319 grant program funds that are available. So once this goes through, then they can apply for that grant, which I think is interesting. Typically, you'd want to apply for the grant to me before you would do something like this, but it's whatever this grant is. You want to.
Yeah, apparently you need to have that plan in place before the grant you can be eligible for.
And Andrea is here tonight to discuss this, Tony.
So, as you mentioned, this is a continuation from last year, and the only change is that AES has been purchased, I think, and merged with, I don't remember what it is, but it's RES now, Restorative Ecological Systems or something similar. Sorry, I botched that. But they do require this watershed-based plan, which is approved by the IEPA and the US EPA. So while we go through this, HR Green has prepared a schedule. We're scheduled to have a kickoff meeting after approval at council, and it would go through next March or July, just depending on the timeline. And in that period, we'll have 3 neighborhood and stakeholder meetings to go over all the items that they have to include. There are 9 minimum items that are included, and they're listed in the attachment. I'm not going to rattle them all off, but they're in that proposal that they had given to us. So they do have different areas that are selected and different types of projects in a cycle. And once we get to the kickoff stage, I'll be working with Logan Gilbertson that came and presented to us again and get those dates and find out when they are. I know Fox River was just recently. The applications for 319 are usually due in July or August. I don't know that we're anticipating anything at this point really for next year's budget to go and tackle one of those projects. We do have construction of the basin that's upstream of Mike O'Brien's, right there at Kirk and Wintergreen Terrace. So that is probably something that would fall in this plan as well. It's one of the projects that were identified in that concept plan. So once we have a better understanding of everything that's in here in the projects and when the grant cycle is, we'll be able to budget for those. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Can we name the retention pond Lake O'Brien?
We could probably maybe make a sign.
A little sign out there for him.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like this is, again, one of the things that, because of all the watershed areas that we have in town, I think it's something that we have to maintain. We have to have a plan for what needs to be done out there, and we have to get things set up and just follow through with the maintenance and whatever work has to happen in those areas. Because I think it's really important that, we don't ignore those things for 20 or 30 years or 50 years or 100 years like has been done sometimes in the past in certain areas, that we can't allow those things moving into the future to not be maintained and to not be planned for, the maintenance of those areas. Because if we do, we're just, to me, handicapping every future city council and everybody that lives in any of those neighborhoods with the problems that are associated with that.
And we have been, we've had talks with both Fermilab representatives as well as Batavia Park District, and they're both willing and willing partners with us to work on these projects as well, and they will be included in all the discussions as we move forward.
Of course, now that, we've put these all in place, there is no rain, right?
Yes, we have another project that
I
wanted
was just
to
about
rain
to say
for,
there's
right?
another one on the other side of town that is not benefiting from the lack of rain. It's hard to get data when you don't have any.
Right.
Okay.
So maybe we should have done this years ago.
Yeah, well, again, that's why I say we have to do, and we have to stay on the schedule that we're on so that this happens in the future, and, future councils can deal with that. Okay, Tony? I don't think.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I move that we approve Resolution 21053R. 55R. Authorizing execution of task order number 3 for watershed-based plan with HR Green in the amount not to exceed $64,900.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Okay, and Tony, this is a motion to recommend to council at this point.
Yes,
It's
yes.
not a motion to approve, so just
Yes.
so you're aware of that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
So we have a motion by Malay and a second by Knopp. Roll call, please.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger. Aye. Miller, Rosado, Beck,
Aye.
Knopf,
Aye.
Chanzit,
Aye.
Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman,
Aye.
and Yazzie.
Aye.
Motion carried 12-0.
Okay, thank you. Next up will be item number 10, which is Resolution 2153-R, authorize the execution of a contract with Alliance Construction for Bridge Preventative Maintenance Project.
Okay, this is a new program, basically coming out of consultation with Lochner Engineering, who does the IDOT bridge inspections. The idea is to produce a long-term preventive maintenance plan for our Donovan Wilson Street Bridge and Deer Path bridges, to prevent, to get ahead of the game and have preventive maintenance to maximize their life. The bid was put out, and the low bidder, Alliance Contractors, came in under budget at $56,025. There's also alternate bids that would be beyond the base, and there was some huge discrepancy from that. I don't know if some staff can point out. I noticed in the alternate one of the firms, MYS, was way out of the ballpark, unless that's a typo. But if anyone wants to chime in on that or ask questions.
Sure. That was some misunderstanding, I believe, by MYS. It was an IDOT spec. Chris Bong did have conversations with them, and as well, we checked back with Lochner, and we've added some language for next time. These alternates, as you mentioned, this is the first time that we've done something like this, so per Lochner, and even looking at some IDOT bid tabs that are public, each bridge is individual and special, so you can't necessarily pick, they're not all apples. So we weren't sure exactly where we would land with prices, and felt that we can put all these items out there and see what we got and what we can fit into our budget. Unfortunately, it was just the base bid. So at least now we have some prices for next year when we go forward, and we have a better idea for budget wise. And with this being a new project, later on, probably in July, Gary Rahat and or myself will be back and presenting this, as well as the road maintenance program. But we wanted to get this up in front of you guys now because we want to get the bridge done while school is out.
Yep. And I fully support it. Preventive maintenance is going to save us money in the long run.
Yep. Andrea, a question I have is, you got big differences in bids, and you're going to change the language for next time. With this bid, are you getting everything you're looking for?
Yes, they have, we've checked the references, and they've done large scale projects for IDOT.
But it's going to cover what the intent was when you set it out for bids to get the program we're looking for, not some of the other.
Yeah, it was just for that bridge abutments, and it was just supposed to be for certain parts of it, and not what I believe MYS was doing was the whole underside of the bridge and not just at the joints.
Okay, thanks.
Andrea, is there an estimate on how long this prolongs the life of the bridges?
Yes, and that'll come back in July.
Okay.
It'll be just in time for budget. it is similar to what Rahat has presented in the past with the lifespan of the road. And if you start doing these preventative maintenance items sooner, that expands the life, just like when you're putting in the crack fill on the road, it extends it a little bit longer, and then the curve falls off a little bit later. I believe it was like 50 years or so is roughly, it could be a little bit longer if some of these items are done, or even with weather conditions too, a little bit less.
Thank you.
I have two questions. The alternate 1 and 2, are those, I mean, I know the washing part of it is that, and sealing would prolong the life of that, but the rubber gland joint and that, is that something that is a regular maintenance replacement item? And are we hurting anything if we wait a year to do any of that?
No, so there is, and this, again, we'll present this later, but some of these items are like a 2-year, 4-year cycle.
Okay.
So that is what Lochner has outlined for us. And then with that, we have cost, and we're just trying to figure out budget-wise how to fit that in there. And again, this is the first time doing it, so it should have been done probably a little bit ago. Nothing is hurt, but it's just one of those routine things, you know, like you rotate your tires.
Okay, because I just want to make sure that, you know, we're trying to do this, prolong the life of the bridge and the surfaces and everything, and that, you know, whatever maintenance schedule we need to be on, we need to try to make sure that we stay on that schedule. And, you know, because of the fact we have one bridge, we really need to make sure that we stay on top of that. And, you know, I think that this is important, you know, from the maintenance standpoint, that we just can't ignore any of that stuff. So I think it's going to be really important to us that when you guys get the numbers and you know what you need to do, we need to make sure that we're ready to make sure to figure out how to fund that, because that has to happen.
Yeah, and Peggy will get those numbers as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, I motion that we recommend to council Resolution 21053R, authorizing execution of a contract with Alliance Contractors for the 2021 Bridge Preventative Maintenance Project.
Second.
Okay, motion by Malay, second by Knopp. Roll call, please.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger, aye. Miller, Rosado, Beck,
Aye.
Knopf,
Aye.
Chanzit,
Aye.
Solfa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman,
Aye.
and Ayazi.
Aye.
Motion carried 12-0.
All right, thank you. Up next would be item number 11, which is Resolution 21-54-R, authorizing Phase 1 engineering agreement with CMT for Main Street reconstruction of Van Ortwick Avenue to Randall Road.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Yeah, this, as you know, back in the fall of 2020, we were awarded a $2.3 million grant for federal surface transportation funds for the reconstruction of the roadway, sidewalk, bike lanes, storm sewer, water main, pedestrian improvements, similar to the section of Main Street that's currently finishing up construction. And this is for the first Phase 1 preliminary engineering for that. I would note that the Phase 1 and Phase 2 are to be paid by the city. The grant, there's grant money that kicks in on the third phase of Phase 3 construction, where 75% of that is covered then by the STP funds. Further discussion. Oh, and also that it is budgeted, while it's there was $300,000 budgeted in this year. The bid has come in at 341. However, the 41,000 would be under next year's budget. So it does remain within budget.
Anybody have any comments or questions? I do, and I see Rod's here, so, I've had questions already when social media has popped up already and people talking about redoing Main Street and what's gonna happen. When we reconstruct that, you know, I mean, up to basically Whipple and Van Ortwick now, we've got sidewalks on both sides. Is that gonna be the plan going west? Further, are we gonna end up with sidewalks on both sides of the street, or are we gonna end up with one sidewalk and no ditches? I mean, I know we don't have any designs, but what's the concept that we think we're gonna use?
So we looked at it a little bit. The sidewalk on south side would be difficult to do, but that's what we are gonna find out when we do the preliminary engineering. The goal would be to put in sidewalk on both sides and do a 13 feet lane so that it's a shared bike lane and cars. You know.
Because that was one of my thoughts too, is if the ditches are eliminated and the bike lane was able to go further west to get to the high school, I think that would help both the sidewalk traffic and, you know, the bicycle traffic, because I think that that's important. Anything we can do to keep teenagers out of cars on Main Street would be just fine with me.
And we even talked about sidewalk on one side and bike lane on other side outside the travel lane. So we'll look into all that. Don't know the answer yet, but
Yeah, because I know that that's historically that section, and Alderman Callahan, before he left the council, had a lot of comments and a lot of questions about the ditches along there. Like the majority of that section is all township, and getting the ditches mowed or cleared or keeping the culverts clear and the water moving through there has been historically a real problem. So anything that we do hopefully alleviates a lot of those concerns in that area. Plus, I think, you know, being an entrance into town to match what we've done in the look that's down further from Van Ortwick to the 31, I think is really important that we try to continue that or do whatever we can to get rid of those issues in that section.
Yep, totally agree. I should also add that in last few weeks we have applied for some federal fund through Representative Underwood, Congresswoman Underwood. I don't want to use this, but it's like a pet project, or what do you say? But she has forwarded that into the transportation bill. She has actually, her office has reached out to us today because she wants to come and visit the site next week and kind of see what project we are proposing and meet with us. So that's a good sign. There is some progress. We have applied for funding for the phase 1 and phase 2. The one that you are approving today, it's for that and for the next phase. So we have kind of slow walked the phase 1 engineering document. In a sense, we have used the QBS process, which is the federal process you're supposed to follow for federal funding to select the consultant, even though we didn't really need to, but we kind of followed that in case some opportunity comes, then we get the funding, then we can say that we followed the process and give us the money. So hopefully there will be some good news on that, and we'll be able to get reimbursed for this money. But if not phase 1, because it's kind of weird, it's like putting the cart before the horse. If you get the consultant before you got the money, then they look at it saying, why did you do that? So, but if we get the money, at least for phase 2, we'll have the money. But phase 1, we'll have to probably pull some strings to make sure we get the money.
Okay, thank you, Rahat. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'd move that we recommend Resolution 21054R to City Council, authorizing execution of Phase 1 Preliminary Engineered Services Agreement for the Main Street Reconstruction Project, Van Norwick Avenue to Randall Road with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly Incorporated.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger. Aye. Miller, absent. Rosato, absent. Beck,
Aye.
Knopf,
Aye.
Transit,
Aye.
Solfa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman,
Aye.
and Ayazi.
Aye.
Motion carried 12-0.
Okay, thank you. Up next will be item number 12, Resolution 21-58-R, approving a Phase 3 construction engineering consultant supplement agreement with BLA for Main Street construction for an amount not to exceed $73,296. Alderman Malay?
Okay, thank you, Alan. As you know, the Main Street project has been ongoing now, and there's been some delay due to COVID, NICOR not being able to get into houses, setback AT&T, and a number of things. So this is for a supplemental agreement for BLA, the engineering firm. This is also, I should mention, is federal grant money, and the amount is $73,296. I would point out that this is in the budget now. The staff had expected this coming, knowing that because of the delays that had happened due to COVID. And I would point out that that this does not include profits. It's just for hours to get the project completed. Any questions?
Nope, I'm happy to see the last little piece of sidewalk, I think, got finished out at, right in front of the Elms. So I'm looking forward to getting that done and then getting all the stuff restored there and on the Area 3 project. Getting emails about issues. I'm about ready to go get some dirt and some grass seed myself. Try to get some things done.
It'll be good to see that done, and
Yeah.
so we can get closer to moving on to the next part of Main Street.
And I think it's going to be a very nice project. Again, just like when Prairie Street was completed, it will definitely be nice. Right now, it's kind of a very interesting little racetrack of dodging manhole covers and divots that are out there right now while they're getting ready to finalize it.
I mean, we are expecting the final surface in a couple of weeks. So unless something happens, that
It won't rain in town until they're ready to put the blacktop down.
right when you are trying to finish paving, that's when
Yeah.
the rain comes. So yeah, we are seeing almost a little bit of sunshine at the end of the tunnel here. So
I'm hopeful to see it finished.
Great. Okay, if there's no further questions, I motion we recommend the council resolution 2158R approving the Phase 3 construction engineering consultant supplement agreement with BLA Incorporated for Main Street construction and for an amount not to exceed $73,296.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger. Aye. Miller, absent. Rosato, absent. Beck,
Aye.
Knopf,
Aye.
Transit,
Aye.
Solfa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi.
Aye.
Motion carried 12-0.
All right, thank you. Okay, up next is item number 13, Resolution 21-59-R, authorizing the city administrator to apply for King County Development Funds and execution of all necessary documents.
Thank you, Alan. Yes, this last one here, Community Development Block Grant funds federal government for the funds from the federal government for the purpose of funding projects which benefits persons of low to moderate income levels. Staff has determined the best project use to apply for funding would be resurfacing and ADA compliance work for portions of Spring Street from Prairie to Hamlet. Rahat did mention in his that the application was basically due tomorrow, but they've been informed that as long as they got the council approval, no, not a council approval. Anyway, the actual application was just sent out prior to tonight's meeting. I haven't got a chance to read through that yet, but thank you, Rahat, for getting that out so promptly. Any questions or discussion?
That will be a good good night's sleep aid tonight. It's 900 and some pages long. If you read it.
I was going to say, the first time I think I remember seeing a CDB grant, it was just unreal. I started reading through it, and I'm like, I will never be able to finish.
I mean, all you have to read is actually the first 20 pages. Rest of it is a lot of financial documents and, you know.
Yeah, and I think over the history of this, I'll just, for everybody that's new on the council, this is something that has really provided money for us to get some streets done in town that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So I think it's pretty much every year we apply for these, and staff's really good about making sure that they identify streets that need it and, you know, that they can justify and they can get the grant for. So it's been really good to provide that for the community, you know, through those funds every year.
I mean, we have done a lot of streets in Ward 4 over last 5 years 6 years now I've been here. We have done a sidewalk along Wilson Street from Kirk to through the apartment complex there, you know, so we have done that. Actually, in probably 2 to 3 weeks, I'll bring in the resurfacing program in front of you. The bids are due next week, and we are getting $94,000 from the Kane County through the CDBG fund. That's also included in that. So that agreement will come in front of you in 2 to 3 weeks for approval. So we have been getting pretty decent amount from them every year.
Yeah, and I can attest to the Fourth Ward. I've been walking around and biking. There's a number of streets that have been resurfaced through the program.
Rahat, when do you expect to hear back on this? How long do they typically take to process a grant application?
They didn't give any timeline, but the construction is going to be next year. So they will probably come back in July or so and tell us whether we got the money. I mean, so far we have been successful every year, and based on the size that the amount that we are asking, I don't expect them to deny us really. So we will this street will be included into next year's 2022 program. They have also mentioned that towards the end, I would say early fall this year, they are looking into announcing another round of funding. We may go into certain part of the city and do a income survey to see whether those areas qualify for that. The streets that are coming to you in 3 weeks, we actually did an income survey in end of 2019. It's a pretty involving process. You send out mails to them, people don't respond, you send out mail to them again, they don't respond, then you go to and knock on their doors and say, can you fill out the survey? Because it's going to benefit. So you have to have certain percentage people respond to those income survey, and that's how you qualify a new area. So, I mean, there is an area that is already qualified, and if you want to do something, no question asked, you get the money. But if you want to go into new area, then you have to do that income survey. So our goal is between now and next call of projects, we will do that income survey in as I said, it's close to area 3 where we are, just southwest part of the town, and see whether that qualifies that area. Then we'll apply for funding. Or we are thinking now that we have resurfaced most of the streets in 4th Ward, we'll look into installing new sidewalks because it's a 40/60. So if you're getting some money, we put in some money and install sidewalk at least on one side of the street, going back into Fourth Ward. So that's the game plan that we have right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion or questions, I move we send Resolution 21059R to City Council with positive recommendation authorizing the city administrator to apply for Kane County Development Funds and execution of all necessary documents.
Have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger. Aye. Miller, absent. Rosado, absent. Beck.
Aye.
Knopf,
Aye.
Chanzit,
Aye.
Solfa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman,
Aye.
and Ayazi.
Aye.
Motion carried 12-0.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is 14, project status. Laura?
Sure. I just have a few things. You may have noticed out here on the South Plaza and next to the Depot Museum that the orange bicycles are back out in the rack, and the Colony Bike Share program has kicked off once again here in the city of Batavia and other communities up and down the Fox River. We're excited that in the next week, we're going to get a code that we can provide to the public so that their first ride is free. And they also have a referral program where riders who are signed up through their app and have used the program before can provide their own code to others so that people can be referred for their free ride. And then that person who did the referring, they'll get a free ride credited to their account. So it's a good way to increase ridership and get a lot of people to try out those bikes. We were happy that our post on social media, I saw someone chimed in saying, we were just talking about this in my house. I'm so glad that they're back. And we did see that the City of Batavia bicycles were among the most used of any of the stations that were part of the network last year. And also happy to see, to Alderman Beck's point last year, some locations which are not located right along the Fox River too, so that we've got some east-west locations that people can utilize those bicycles as well. Everyone is very interested to know how can we buy garbage stickers, because they have disappeared from some locations where people are accustomed to getting them. First and foremost, I should say that all of our city buildings are open now. So if you need to buy stickers, one of the places where you can buy stickers is our utility billing department right here in City Hall. Stickers are also available at the Batavia Jewel, Menards, at Ace Hardware, and a new location which has been added, which is technically in North Aurora, but located right on our border, is the 7-Eleven that's located at 718 Butterfield. That's located at the corner of Butterfield and Hart Road. Waste Management is working very closely with Berkeley Finer Foods. They think that they will start selling the stickers again after Memorial Day weekends. There will be a surcharge on those to cover the costs of that location for credit card purchases. We're also working with, they're also working with Walgreens. Walgreens installed new point of sale service that removed both Advanced and Waste Management as vendors, and so they are working through the process to get back onto those systems as vendors. And once they do that, all Walgreens locations in the city of Batavia will also be an outlet for sales of those stickers. And let's see, what else? Oh, the construction that's going on outside of City Hall on the NICOR gas main here on Island Avenue. There was an issue yesterday that was a little bit of a bump in the road on that project, that there was an accidental puncture to one of the pipes out there. And so they had to call in some emergency crews to shut down that line. And so it's maybe setting back that project a few days, but they had expected up to this point, up to that occurring yesterday, that Geneva Construction was going to come in tomorrow to begin doing the restoration work. So they're literally right before the finish line on this project. So I would expect that within the next week, everything will be put back in place, and all of the closure materials will be removed, and it'll be restored to what it ordinarily looks like. And those are the updates that I had, unless anybody has any questions for me.
I have 2 questions, Laura. What are the hours of the city hall?
8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay. And then when you talked about Berkeley charging a surcharge to cover
Yes.
credit card purchases, is that going to be for everybody across the board, or just people that purchase with a credit card?
I don't know. I can clarify that for you.
Okay, that would be great. You may start seeing a lot of cash sales.
Well,
Right?
At least there's an east side one now. You just gotta go to the 7-Eleven on Butterfield.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, people in Woodland Hills are not happy about that. I took a call today, but I got them signed up for the Friday email and also the Ward 1 emails.
Great. Thank you very much, because that really helps. There's a lot of useful information in there.
With the bikes, where are we at with trying to get advertising dollars?
I'm sorry?
With advertising on the bikes?
So we aren't anywhere with trying to get advertising on the bikes. Last year, Colony had said that they were going to be reaching out to some of the larger healthcare networks that are along the regional path of the bike share program, but that hasn't come through. So we certainly could reach out to try to establish that. I get the impression that Colony does not have the internal staff to support that at this time, but certainly, we could approach them about that and see what it would take to stand up a program of that sort to defray the cost. The cost of this program on an annual basis for the city of Batavia is $12,000. We entered into a 2-year agreement for last year and this year. And so this year, we would need to determine whether we want to continue with the program. And maybe as part of that discussion, we could say, this is the type of program that we would implement to try to defray costs.
With what we paid for the program last year, was there credits for the amount of time that they did not have bikes out for us?
There were not credits for that. However, we had contracted for 7 e-bikes, and the delays were related to not being able to provide the e-bikes, and they did end up providing us with 12 standard bikes as opposed to just 7 e-bikes, and I think the rental prices are the same for either type.
And what bikes do we have this year?
We can only have the standard bikes because King County Forest Preserve District does not allow any motorized bikes or wheeled things on the trail, although you could see them everywhere.
All the time. And as long as people behave, I don't think you're going to see, anybody out patrolling it.
Right.
Did the Forest Preserve actually put the kibosh on the e-bikes, or that was an internal city
Yep.
decision? Because
No, that's actually their rule, and they hosted an entire meeting last year to debate it, and they decided to keep their rule in place.
Well, they kept their rule in place, but they didn't tell the municipalities that we could not keep bikes.
No, last year they
No,
couldn't
it's just that
provide
you
them.
can't use them on the trail.
Yeah,
Right, but
You can use them around town if you wanted to get e-bikes.
So I'm
but-
still going to push for that for next year, that we get e-bikes, because up and down the hills, if we want to promote biking as a transportation in Batavia, having those available so people can get from point A to point B in our city and support our city and not use it as a tourist thing back and forth, it's going to make the sales of e-bikes go up. Because
Well,
once you
and-
use one, you want one.
And I was going to say, I think you make that point, and I think that's going to become more and more prevalent. The cost is coming down on them. The retro kits are available. I think that's gonna be more and more, so I think that when that does come up with the county, we should definitely be aware of that and go and talk to them about that,
Yeah.
because as long as they,
With Colony, you mean?
well, with the county and with Colony, to allow them, because the proliferation of e-bikes is everywhere.
Right. With the city, we can allow them. We can still get Colony.
Right, anywhere in the city, but then,
Would we put people in the position where they, so I guess maybe we should locate the rack someplace not on the path, since the path is not a place where you can use an e-bike. Although it would seem that a bike share program would do well on a bike path.
Well, we've got 2 racks and they're both on a bike, pretty much on the bike
Yeah.
path. So yes, I think we could move one away. And I also think that there's room for advocacy to the county, because in Will County and other surrounding counties, they follow the state guidance, which allows e-assist bikes on the bike paths because they're considered a different class. King County is the only one I've heard of, and the folks that I've talked to on the Forest Preserve Board are like, huh, what?
well,
Yeah,
and that's
let's
something
talk
that
about
maybe we as a council should push for to try to,
Yeah.
we write letters to everybody else, maybe we should write a letter to them and, or a couple of us go in and talk to them, because I think that that's gonna be important, that if we have them available, they should be able to be used anywhere, especially on the trails.
Right. Yeah, I think the best path would be to get the rule changed.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay with that. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Okay. If I can get back into this. Others, thank you. Wow, that was great. I didn't even have to type anything. Anybody have any others?
Let me just throw one thing out. The last couple of days, we have received complaints from people about coyote nests in Batavia. And we have a contract with the Kane County Animal Control Department to supposedly come in and deal with this, although they haven't been real communicative with us. The police department's tried repeatedly to get it. I don't know if Laura, jump in on this. I don't know if we're of the opinion that we really have the legal right to go onto private property and start chasing wild animals around.
It's just not something that we're trained or equipped
to do.
Even if the homeowner were to invite us to please
Yeah.
remove the family of coyotes, it just isn't something that we're trained or
So we've
capable of doing at this point.
We've got a couple people that are getting real uptight about this, so I'm thinking, I just wanted to share this with you because I think some of you may get calls about it. And we're still trying to get Kane County Animal Control to come in and take the pet. One's claiming that they have a family of coyotes, of mother and father and 5 pups on their property. And the father is getting very, very cranky about anybody coming near, and he likes to show his teeth to everybody. And so there's great concern about this. So you never know from one day to the next what's going to appear on the doorstep here, but the coyotes have been the conversation of late. So
It was probably 10, 12 years ago, I had to catch 2 of them in our neighborhood, the 2 abandoned pups that were in the neighborhood. And basically what I found out at that time dealing with the county and anywhere else, unless it's a rescue organization or somebody that's willing to come in, you're not going to get the county to come in and remove a den. They're just not going to do that. If it's a sick animal or, the skunk that's walking around in circles in the street, they'll come and take care of that. I really wish I had written it down. There was several posts on Facebook about, hey, we can see this little fox. My wife and I saw it come through the parking lot in front of Daddy-O's, 20 feet away from us. Wasn't fazed by us. Thought it was a dog at first. The rescue groups are more than willing. I mean, that happened right away. They ended up, I think, over by the skate park. They ended up catching it, so that it could be rescued, taken somewhere where they could, cure the absolute mange that it had. So I think that that's probably the best source, is to find a rescue group or somebody that's willing to come in and do that. And then, yes, the property owner has to give the okay for somebody like that to come on your property, and then they can try and relocate them. Typically, if it's a healthy family and everything's okay, they're not going to want to touch them. And the biggest thing I can tell people is don't feed them. Do not give them a source of food, or they will come. You'd be amazed, one coyote will be 5 in a day or two. I had a neighbor at the end of the street that decided it was great fun to have his kids sit in the back of the pickup truck and throw lunch meat at the coyotes so they could see how many they could draw out of the woods at the end of a street that's a wooded lot. If you do that, you're going to have them in your neighborhood, and they're going to be there all summer looking for food, and they'll find it because all the rabbits and everything else that are there. So you got to remember, they're wild animals. They're hunting for food. The reason that they're here is they don't have enough food elsewhere. And so you cannot give them any source of food, and then they'll leave. They'll go somewhere else to find food.
Well, that's the argument I'm hearing from some of the residents is that somebody in the neighborhood likes them and they're giving them food. And so you got the one neighbor not liking the other neighbor,
Yeah.
and then we're calling the mayor because I'm supposed to have the ability to take care of all of them.
I think, again, I've seen this already, at least in my neighborhood, just a couple of walks I've been out on. There are an extreme overabundance of rabbits again. And anytime there are a ton of rabbits, the coyotes end up everywhere in town.
Ton of animals that eat rabbits.
Right, and that's the reality. There's a bunch of wooded areas over on the west side that they like to hide out in. Anytime they can get in a shed, under a shed, anywhere else, they will set up a den, and there will be a whole bunch of them. So I wouldn't tell anybody unless you've actually tried it or know somebody that's done it, don't try and catch them. Find somebody that's with a rescue organization, and they can take care of the ones that are sick. If they're
Do you have
healthy,
any numbers of rescue organizations?
I don't have it. It was on Facebook, and there's one right on I think out off Seaview Road. And then there's one out, the ones that I took the
Can you get me those
Cubs to.
numbers?
I can find them, and then I can get them to you. And, that may be even something that we put together a post and put on the website, so that if people see that and they see, what looks like a sick animal.
Friday's little chit
Okay.
chat that I do.
I'll make sure I get that number for you
Nice to have
before
some
that.
Information that I could share because,
Yeah.
I'm told by some of the folks at the county that Batavia is unique in its setting because on our east side, we've got Fermilab, which is a federally protected preserve of 6,800 acres, and so nobody's gonna get shot, no animal's gonna get shot out there. And on the west side, we now have 1,643 acres that has been bought by Kane County for the forest preserve of the Dick Young Forest Preserve, and they've bought a lot of farms out there that are now gonna be forest preserve. So we're gonna have this huge area on the west side that's going to allow for the generation of a whole bunch of things to come out of that in search of, the police tell me that on the nights when it's the garbage the next day, they seem to know when it is, and they're highly here cruising, either the east side or the west side, and north of Wilson or south of Wilson, whatever night it is, they're there.
Yeah, we've had many times when we've left city council meetings at a late meeting on a Tuesday night and walk out, and they're literally taking the bridge across town.
Right.
Come right down in front of City Hall here, and they go across the footbridge. We've seen, I think one night there was 5 of them together.
Like they got a newspaper out there that they tell
Yeah.
them when they can come into Batavia.
And again, it's searching for food. And like you said, you've got one great place for them to live on the east side and one on the west. And they're connected by bike paths and prairie paths and easy ways to get there. Okay, I'll get the numbers for you.
Good, thank you.
Anybody else have any others?
Thanks for making me feel safe riding home tonight.
They are not going to bother you. That outfit is way too bright. They will stay away from you. Okay. If there's nothing else, can I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? All right, we can go home.
Good night.